Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love.
Shifting my money beliefs was all about finding expanders, which are people and stories that expand your mind to what is truly possible with your money. We aim to be your expanders on this podcast. So today we're sharing 3 money beliefs that we've embodied that will literally change your life. This is a quick and punchy episode today, so let's get right into them.
Amazing. I'm really excited about this episode and about these money beliefs because we really pared down we have a million money beliefs, right? We really pared it down to the 3 that we feel like have been the most impactful for us. And I think, I'm really excited to share them. Our first one, I think, is something that was kind of almost like my intro into really looking at my money beliefs. And it's the belief that every dollar I spend comes back to me times 10. I was kind of introduced to this concept of money as an exchange of energy, and something about that really shifted. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this belief in particular, kind of bleeds into other areas of your finances as well. But I was introduced to the idea of money as an exchange of energy, where it's you spend on something because you believe that what you're spending it on is of equal or greater value than the actual cash that you're spending. And so when you think about it as an energy is always in circulation. So when you put that out into the ether, right, it's in circulation. It's still there. It's not like you spent the money and it burned. So staying in that mindset of every time I spend, it's still out there and it's going to circulate back to me at some point because it's an energy, was something that really, really shifted my mindset around money.
Yeah, you always talk about the term money as an exchange of energy. I always think about it as money is an exchange of value. And that's something that I heard pretty early on in my money journey, just this idea that when you provide value, you get money in return, and the opposite works true as well. And for me, I think this money belief really goes into the whole scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset thing as well, because the more money you make doesn't necessarily mean that your money beliefs are going to change, and the underlying kind of mindset that you have around money is going to change. And I know this is something that I've been seeing over the past couple of years, that even though my income has been increasing, the scarcity mindset definitely still creeps in. And I think that's still something that I'm struggling to this day, is kind of letting go of the money that you're making in order to let it do its intended purpose for your life, because money in and of itself is not going to increase your quality of life, give you your time back. You have to spend it and invest it to make it work for you. So that's something that I've definitely been struggling with as well, especially as I'm prepping to buy a house this summer. That's going to be a large purchase, and I'm going to have to let go of a lot of money in my account for a greater purpose. And that is something that I'm really struggling with.
The scarcity versus abundance mindset is, I think, one of the most, if you're going to work on anything when it comes to your money mindset, I think that is 100% the thing that you should work on, because I still have a ways to go with it, right? The scarcity mindset kind of creeps in sometimes. But I think it's been super transformative. And I think especially when it comes to investing in yourself, because when we're talking about money I spend comes back to me tenfold, it's not just about the dollars that come back to you. Yes, absolutely. If you spend money on something, an investment in your business or something like that, you're like, okay, I want to make more money in the end. However, it doesn't always come back in cash. And so one shift that I've had with this belief is seeing ROI, so the return on my investment, as not just cash but value, and does it improve my life? So for example, I spent $3,300 on a dietitian. That's not going to help me necessarily make more money. It could change my quality of life, which then could help me make more money, right? When I'm not struggling with the health things that I'm struggling with. The ROI, the return on my investment, is feeling better. I shared a little bit on social media about potentially having endometriosis surgery and paying for it out of pocket because I really like the surgeon that I found. That obviously is an investment in myself, and it's not necessarily going to help me. It's not going to give me cash, right, necessarily, but it's now the return on my investment is feeling better, having a better quality of life. And I think those things naturally will eventually make me more money when I can show up differently with better energy and not be in pain. But it's not always cash that physically comes back to you, but it's this belief that, okay, if I spend this money on myself, I'm trusting that it will actually bring value back into my life that is worth what I just spent, or more.
Definitely. I heard this quote that investments in yourself are the only ones where the gains aren't taxed. And I think that's such a good way to think about it. Like, obviously, if you place a regular investment, for the most part, if you gain money from those investments, you're going to have to pay taxes on that. But if you invest in yourself and you make a lot of money through X, Y, and Z things, those gains aren't taxed. So thinking about it like that, and then also thinking about it in terms of an investment in yourself is a good investment only if you truly believe in yourself to actually execute on what you need to do and follow through with what you need to do. So I think that's kind of the distinction there. And then also making the distinction between spending money and investing in yourself, because obviously the kind of like investments in yourself, like everything can be justified as an investment in yourself, especially when you're talking about it in terms of like not just getting cash back, but getting value back as well. So really thinking through like, what are those things that truly add value to your life and in turn are like can be considered an investment in yourself. I know for me, one of the things that I talk about consistently is rent without roommates. It's exponentially more expensive for me to live in this apartment without roommates and not split my rent with someone. But in turn, that gives me a lot more time and space and mental energy to focus on growing a business, like having side hustles, working at kind of odd hours. And in turn, I think that that makes me more money in the long run. So I'm investing in myself in that capacity.
100%. I think it also goes into like when you have this belief that the money you spend comes back to you tenfold, I think you also start to view the decisions and like where you spend your time and what you say yes and no to differently as well, because you're thinking more about your time as a currency as well, and like how you spend your money and your time. And I wanted to share this story because it was like one of those moments where you're like, that was the freakiest thing that's ever happened to me, and you just sit there and you're like, what the heck? But it was such a perfect opportunity of the idea of like money being in circulation, and like when you let it go, it comes back to you. So when I first started freelancing, I had a client who was my highest paying client at the time. They paid me $1,800 a month for social media management. And I couldn't fathom like being paid that much. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so much. And this client ended up becoming pretty, like, I would say verbally abusive to other people on the team, not to me, but to other people. And obviously I still affected me because I was just like, this is wrong. Would call me at all hours, like, which my mistake of giving my phone number, but that's besides the point. It was just getting to be, it was just way too much. And it was draining me. I was like sick over it. Like it gave me so much anxiety. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. It was awful. And I remember talking to one of my best friends and I was like, I don't know what to do about it. And she was like, you need to let the client go, Grace. Like, what do you mean? And I was like, but I'm giving up $1,800 a month, like 1,800. And she was like, yeah. And like, it will come back to you. Like, I promise. And so we're on a call and I said, okay, I'm going to fire this client. So the split second that I ended that sentence and said like, I'm going to fire this client, I get a message from one of my favorite freelance clients at the time. This like angel of a client sends me a Slack message and it says, any chance you have, I forget, I think it was like 10 more hours a week or 15 more hours a week of time to help us. We need more help on this like marketing thing. And that amount of time and my rate that I was charging them was exactly $1,800 a month. It was the weirdest moment I can't even just like, it was so strange where you're like I don't think it was a coincidence. I think it was the fact that I said no to one thing and I closed that door and I was met with something better. And so this was an opportunity of me saying no, right? Not necessarily me spending money, but me letting money go essentially. So it's the same thing as basically spending, letting money go and it coming back to me in another way and in something that was way better. So I think once you learn to embody this idea that spending, every dollar you spend comes back to you tenfold, it bleeds into other areas of your life and you start to think more about how you spend your time and how you spend your money and how money really is a currency, like your time and energy is a currency. So yeah, definitely a big mindset shift there.
100%. The idea of opportunity cost is so prevalent in so many different things. And I know we are filming an episode today. I'm not sure if it's going to go out before this episode or potentially next week's episode, but we're filming an episode today on decision fatigue and talking all about all of the different decisions that we're making and how our mental energy gets drained throughout the day and all of those different things. And I think that's something so important to remember because even even if you feel like you have the time to say yes to something, or you're like, I don't really have that much onto my plate, I might as well say yes, even if it doesn't feel super aligned. Your mental energy is limited more than your physical time, I would say. Spreading yourself too thin mentally is probably stopping you from getting all of those aligned opportunities. So that's something super important to consider as well. And then the other note on this topic is I was reading a book the other day, kind of along like a similar line, and there was a quote in there that said, small missteps now lead to large missteps in the future. And I thought that that was really important to consider as well. Like if you are sitting here saying like, well, it's just one little gig, like it's just one little thing that might not be totally aligned, but how bad can it be? Even though it's not aligned, like I can still take it. I can still get the kind of like quick cash or whatever it may be. Small missteps now will lead to you being totally misaligned later. So I think that's something that's kind of important to remember as well. But I think that's all for the first money belief. Let's get into the second one, which is small, consistent investments outperform perfectly timed big moves. And this is something that I think about a lot because I know we were talking in our affirmations episode, which is still like one of my favorite episodes to date. We posted it in January, so you can go back and listen to that one. But we were talking about in there how one of the affirmations that I say all the time is I am capable of anything with consistent work, and reframing it from hard work to consistent work. And there's this idea that most people give up on things before that thing can actually come to fruition and give them the fruits of their labor. So when I was looking up some different like stats and things for this episode, I came across the science behind giving up, and I thought this was super interesting to share. There was the study done at the University of Washington, which basically looked at mice and what happens in their brain when they are forced, or when they're looking at tasks and those tasks become challenging. And when tasks become challenging, we have these neuron kind of like receptors in our brain that is essentially a quit mechanism designed to keep us safe. So when we're going through a task, the task becomes challenging, those neurons go off in our brain and it basically tells us to quit to keep us safe. And that's what the study showed, was that the mice like were designed to quit. But when you push through that and you don't quit when a task gets challenging, then that like diminishes those receptors in your brain. So your quit mechanism kind of like stops working, and you're telling yourself like, no, just because it gets challenging, that doesn't mean we're going to quit. So I think that's like kind of an interesting way to think about it. The next time you're faced with a task that's becoming a little bit challenging and you think that you need to give up, it's just your brain telling you to keep you safe. But if you push through that, then you can actually enjoy the fruits of your labor, because I know there's definitely things that you start working on and you want to give up before it actually comes to fruition. Like if you're posting on social media for 3 months and you're not seeing the money come in or the followers come in yet, it might be month 4 that all of that stuff would start to come in. But if you give up on month 3, you're never going to end up getting to the point where the fruits of your labor can come to fruition.
I love this so much. I know, like I shared recently on my socials, which I don't think I had really ever talked about, but I feel like people who listen probably have picked this up. I love psychology. I think it's so fascinating. I think neuroscience is so fascinating. And so I love this like concept of these like mice and their little like give up receptors. I think one thing that I've been reading the book The 12-Week Year, and I've been trying to implement it for Q2 and just kind of creating a plan for myself, because this is something that I struggle with, of like I want to see immediate success and like immediate feel good, you know. So if I try a new routine and like it doesn't feel great, you know, or my dietitian and my previous doctor and my therapist have all been telling me to meditate, and I'm like, oh, like I'll sit down and I'll do it once, and then I'm like, oh, well, I didn't like that, I don't want to do it again. And one thing that I've been thinking about as I've been developing a plan for myself for Q2, how I like thought about this the other day. I asked myself, I was like, how do you know the plan doesn't work if you've never fully followed it? And I just like thought that to myself, and I was like, well, shoot, I'm like, this is embarrassing, because I'm like, I'll have this plan, and really all what it is about the small little steps every day of like, okay, well, I didn't love doing a meditation, but I know that my nervous system right now is triggered in all sorts of ways, and I really need to like bring my stress down because it's making my health worse, and I need to like, you know, calm down. I need to be doing it. I need to take those consistent steps. The same way with work, I need to do that. And I think a lot of people, myself included, we want to see results because it's motivating, but a lot of times these like the little bits are going to get you to a better spot than if you're like yeah, making these like big moves and then not doing anything, or big move and not doing anything. And you just think about like the little, like if you were to graph that out or chart that out, like if you're going up then down, versus if you're like actually like moving up, kind of like a staircase. So I think this goes into investments too. Like I think a lot of people start to feel overwhelmed when it comes to investing, because they're like, well, I like, maybe I don't have like a ton to be able to throw into investment. And so it's like, all right, well, trying to wait to time the market and invest like a big chunk at once or whatever, or when you quote unquote have enough, is not a good approach. And just instead, like, invest what you can consistently, and like you'll be in a better position down the line, versus if you try to time it so much.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to bring this up right now too, because I know all over social media right now we're seeing how there's a big recession coming and the stock market's going to crash and all of those things. And I know I've been getting a lot of comments on my videos, but then also literally text messages from people in my personal life being like, should I stop contributing to my 401k, or should I pull my money out of the stock market, or should I stop investing? And I think this is just like a good time to kind of reset and be like, no, dollar cost averaging, like if you don't know what that means, basically just exactly what Grace said, just a little bit consistently every single week, every single month, whatever your cadence is, just stay consistent. I also think that this is why it's really important to really understand stock market fundamentals, because if you don't understand why the stock market goes up, and if there is a stock market decline for a couple of months, it will eventually go back up. If you don't understand that at a fundamental level, it's going to be really hard to stay consistent. And I think that kind of like that definitely applies to all of your goals that you need to stay consistent with. If you don't have a strong why, if you don't truly understand the why behind your goals, you're never going to stay consistent with it, because that motivation is going to diminish and you're not going to be able to stay disciplined because you don't have a strong why. I also think that kind of like the last thing on this money belief that's good to remember is the most successful people are the ones that fail the most. I heard this from a book. I read the book, The Originals, I believe this is from. I read that last year, and this has really stuck with me. But essentially, the book was talking about how the most successful people in any industry, he applied this to like the art industry, the music industry, all of the most well-known people are literally the people that failed the most, people with billion-dollar companies. They had 100 other companies that failed before it. Taylor Swift has, I don't actually know if Taylor Swift is a good example of this, because I feel like everything at this point like pops off her, but like Taylor Swift artists that like have made it so big, for every one hit song, they've had 100 songs that have flopped. So like if you're not failing, you're never going to get to the point that you need to be, because those who fail the most are the ones that eventually get to a point of success. So even if it doesn't work out 95% of the time, that 5% will make up for all of the time that you spent on the 95% of things.
100%. And then our third belief, just moving on into that one, is that your income has no ceiling. And it's this idea that your earning potential isn't fixed by your job title, your degree, or your industry. And I know we talk about this a lot because we talk a lot about the entrepreneurship side of things, and how literally everyone has something that they can monetize further, whether it's just like you go back and you're negotiating your salary, or you're changing a job, or you're picking up a side hustle, or you do an entrepreneurial endeavor. Like, there are so many ways to make money, but the beliefs behind that, I feel like, are the biggest things, which goes back to scarcity and abundance. But if you do not, but like if you just truly believe like, well, my income is capped, I'm never going to make more, you actually, which we won't get into the deep like neuroscience of it, that we have an episode called How to Believe You're Capable of More, and that goes into it so much. When you constantly say to yourself like, I'm never going to make more, I can't make more, all these things, you're training your brain to pay attention to places where you feel limited, or ways that you might be limited, versus if you're actually believing like, okay, my income has no ceiling, then your brain is actually being trained to pay attention to opportunities to make more. And I've given this example before on another podcast episode, but I wanted to mention it again because it's obscure. And I think it just goes to show like how much this mindset shift can really impact your income. There's a podcast called I think it's called Mind Your Business, or The Mind Your Business, something like that. It's by James Wedmore, I believe. No, maybe I'm getting his name confused. Just type in like Mind Your Business podcast, it should come up. But basically, he did this interview with a woman who had taken his course called Business by Design, and she was in like the equestrian space. I don't know exactly what she did, but she did something with horses, like boots on the ground horse business that she had. And so she decided to create a course on whatever she did. I don't know what kind of horse business she had, but I believe it was about how to create a horse business like she had or something like that, right? She made over $100,000 from her online course. Most people would literally block their blessings in that situation and cut themselves off from that potential success because they would think, well, I have a boots on the ground business and I'm working with horses and people. Who's going to want to, like, how else would I make money? I'm not going to charge people more for my services in person. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? People would block themselves from that. But her staying open to it, she was able to make so much more, gave herself a 6-figure income stream from her course alone. So, like, I don't know. I just think people sometimes get in the mindset of like, especially if you're in a 9 to 5, I feel like people can be like, my income is capped. And it's like, you have to open your brain a little bit more to see more of the opportunities around you because they're there. But if your mindset is blocked off from it, you're not even going to see them.
100%. It's definitely just about shifting your mindset from it's not possible to how is this possible? And I think the thing about that too is you don't even necessarily need to know the what. You need to be thinking about like how is this possible, but like what is possible you don't really need to know, but what you do need to do is open your mind to other people doing a bunch of these like really cool things, like starting a course on equestrian, whatever. Even if you're not in the horse space and you don't want to try to do that, listen to those stories. I know for me, like I said at the beginning of this episode, so much of my money beliefs and where I'm at with my money came from finding expanders and listening to inspiring people and finding stories. And for me, what that looked like was in college, I started reading some personal finance books, but I also started listening to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of the podcasts were all around real estate investing. I probably listened to like over 100 podcast episodes just on the topic of like real estate investing and people who had 2 properties and then people who had 200 properties and just a ton of different people doing a lot of different things all in the real estate space. And I thought that that was something that I wanted to get into. But what that really did for me was it shifted my mindset from I'm going to work a 9 to 5 job for the rest of my life. And that's the only way to earn a living, to there's a lot of people out there doing a ton of different things, making a lot of money, owning their own businesses, being creative. And that started to expand my mind and open it up to, okay, if there's something that I want to do, let's think of how I want to do it. I wanted to share one other kind of like example for how this framework applies, because like you said, like if you are sitting there in a 9 to 5 job and you're saying, well, I'm in a 9 to 5 job, like that's what I'm going to do. And like my income is capped, kind of rewiring that thought to, okay, these are the skills that I do in my 9 to 5 job. How can I take those skills and freelance them out? And then maybe I'll get to a point where I'm freelancing them out, but now I want to hire people underneath me and train them how to do those skills and create a little like agency for myself around whatever skill that I do in my 9 to 5 job. So now all of a sudden you don't have your 9 to 5 job, you have an agency and you've scaled your income by hiring people out underneath you and you have a whole business. So it's just kind of about thinking through different opportunities, what would make sense for you, trying different things too. Not everything has to work, but just try different things and see where you could potentially want to go because the opportunities are out there.
Absolutely. I want to echo what you said too about like the like ways that people make money and exposing yourself to that. And I think even just like, I mean, I'm assuming everyone who's listening to this probably follows us on social media, but just go to like your favorite. It could be creators, it could be business owners, it could be just like you're on LinkedIn and you're poking around at entrepreneurs. You'll find it probably easier to do with entrepreneurs, but like look at their LinkedIn bio, look at their LinkedIn profiles and see how are they making money? Because you'll start to just like, it will open your mind to different ways that people make money that you wouldn't have really even expected. And then also it'll open your mind to just how much money people are making. And some people are really open about this. There's a woman who she sells courses on how to sell courses because she used to sell health-based or nutrition. She's like a nutritionist or something. So I think she was selling nutrition coaching. And then it was so successful. People are like, how'd you do it? So then she pivoted her business. But her thing is like Lazy Millionaire.
Oh, I follow her.
Yeah, she's great. Or Christina Galbato is another creator who does something kind of similar. But the Lazy Millionaire, her name's Amy, she shares her like screenshots of her income. And I will see sometimes it would be like hundreds of thousands of dollars in 1 month. And I look at that and I'm like, if she can do it, I can too. And you start to think, you're like, well, dang, like if I thought that my income was truly capped at where I was, I would have looked at that and you'd probably be like jealous of it or be like, oh, there's no way that's true. Like she's definitely lying. But if you hold the belief of like, okay, yeah, like my income is not capped. I'm staying open to opportunities. You'll see things like that and be like, okay, this could be possible for me. And I want to say with that, I know I mentioned this before, but if you are listening to this and you're like, I don't know, like I just don't feel like I'm capable of increasing my income, or I don't feel like I do feel like my income is capped, go back and listen to the episode called How to Believe You're Capable of More. I think it was truly one of our best episodes we have on this podcast. And I know it was helpful for a lot of people. I feel like that will help you kind of shift your mindset into a place where you truly believe that your income is not capped and that you are capable of more and you can increase your income. So, wanted to plug that episode to go back and reference.
Yes, love that. And I think with that, that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any other money beliefs that have been helpful to you, definitely leave them in Spotify and we can potentially include them in next week's or next time we do an episode like this. But you can also leave us a DM on Instagram at the Life You Love Pod. But thanks for tuning into the podcast. And until next week, perfect.